Today we have a consent agenda, hearing agenda, as well as a meeting agenda totaling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 projects. I am Chris Ellis, your chair, joined by colleagues Martin Hall, Shadi Kennedy, and Glenessa Gilliard, as well as our very capable planning staff and council. We're going to move through items quickly, expeditiously, but most importantly, thoroughly. The instructions on how to sign up to speak on projects laid out, as well as the time and rules of procedure. I understand the staff has a new clock that will appear on the screen so that everybody's aware of their time. And without further ado, we can move into the consent agenda. 2 items for the consent agenda. The first one is an amendment of the development plan review number 0082 for 17 Holland Ave. This is the demolition project that I believe we've been tracking for a little while, next to the new development. Board members, do we have any questions from the staff? Did you hear anything from the applicant on this one? Hearing none, we'll take the 2 consent agenda items in together. Also for the consent agenda is a conditional use permit for 232 Myrtle Avenue for conversion of the existing dwelling townhouse containing 1 dwelling into a dwelling townhouse containing 3 dwelling units. Before we ask for consent, are there any questions on that one? All right. Is there a motion to adopt the 2 projects, number 00322 and project number 00615, for a development plan review, amendment, and conditional use permit respectively for approval on the consent agenda? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by Vanessa and second by Martin to accept the 2 projects on the consent agenda. Is there any unreadiness or questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. All right, on to the hearing agenda. We have a zoning text amendment presented by Councilmember Owusu Adani. And it's to amend the USDO in relation to permitting accessory dwelling units. I don't know if I didn't see the councilman.
I don't. Yep.
We're ready.
All right. So accessory dwelling units are already defined in the Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance. So the definition, as seen on the screen, isn't going to change. Essentially, it refers to a dwelling unit that would be located in the same lot as a single unit dwelling that's either internal or attached to the structure or detached from the principal structure. Next slide. Here are some different types of structures that would be considered as an accessory dwelling unit. So you have, your examples of attached dwelling units that could be internal, whether in the basement or above, as well as, conversions of a garage or just a new construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit. When talking about accessory dwelling units, some of the main benefits that we are presenting and hope to gain through this ordinance would be increasing much needed housing opportunities and choices throughout the city, providing a alternative housing option specifically for our seniors, as the city has an older population and the region generally has been shifting in that demographic. ADUs are also smaller and utilize less water and energy consumption, making them a good sustainable option for housing. They also, generally speaking, have a potentially lower construction cost than a conventional single unit dwelling. And many of the existing accessory dwelling units, if you think of like a granny flat or in-law apartment that currently exists, which are like legally non-conforming, would become conforming under the zoning ordinance if it were to be adopted. When looking at some different data that's available, there's information from the AARP, specifically from a 2021 study, and just finding that a lot of seniors would be happy to either have an ADU or to live in one, or would consider having like a loved one in one, whether they were to be the ones in the primary unit itself, or if they were to be the ones that were to move to the secondary unit. If we take a step back and look at where things are with New York State and the county, the state has been pretty vocal and supportive of ADUs. There is the +1 ADU program, which allocates $85 million in funding over 5 years, really aimed at incentivizing the construction of ADUs across the state. There are many local municipalities nearby in this region that are taking advantage of this funding as they've adopted ADU regulations. There's also several other bills that have been introduced statewide. And then more recently, as many may know, the Albany County is proposing a local tax law that would provide a real property tax exemption for those that were to construct or convert part of the unit into an accessory dwelling unit. In terms of its endorsements across the state, Governor Hochul has been quite vocal about its support in trying to provide more housing options across the state in different areas. The Commissioner of Homes and Community Renewal has also been highly supportive of it, and recently the County Executive, Dan McCoy, has been a proponent of new legislation to incentivize the construction of ADUs across the region. When we look at ADUs more specifically in ordinances across the state and nationwide, we see that there a lot of our nearby neighbors and places such as Troy, Rochester, Kingston, Colony, Niskayuna, they have ordinances regarding ADUs. While they all differ from place to place with different regulations, there's certainly a lot of similarities to them. And then when we are looking statewide, we more recently look at states such as Massachusetts and Connecticut that have broadly legalized ADUs, kind of preempting some of the exclusionary zoning policies that existed to provide more housing options as a way to create housing, alternative housing solutions, but also as a way to potentially drive down some of the housing costs. When we look at the city of Albany, some of the data we look at is the fact that there's been a significant change in the median sales price in the last 5 years. I'm not sure, no one finds that surprising, but it's gone up about 53%. Generally speaking, we know the capital region hasn't produced enough housing to keep up with the population growth and demand. This housing scarcity has contributed to increasing housing prices. Certainly not the only reason, but it's part of the reason. Looking at a lot of the local data, we're also seeing rising mortgage gaps and wage gaps that are making housing less affordable. A lot of this information is coming from a newly published report from the CDRPC. Old homeowners are retaining their properties for longer periods of time, which can be a good thing, but it also means that in many cases they're looking for ways to offset some of the costs with additional revenue, or potentially to stay in their house in their neighborhood, but possibly on a smaller scale. When we look at some of the demographic shifts, this is specific to the city of Albany. So on the left, we see the persons per household. In 1960, it was about 3.19. In 2023, according to census data, it was about 2.04. So what that really is telling us is that even if you're looking at the same number of people, the number of housing units you need has gone up over 50%, even if the population were to stay exactly the same. I believe the numbers, if you took 1,000 people in 1960, you'd need about 313 units. And in 2023, you'd need about 490 units to house the same number of people. If you can just go back quickly. The other item would just be how family compositions, as we think of like traditional families versus non-traditional, has also shifted over the years. Again, not unique to Albany, but just showing that the way housing works and providing different housing options becomes more applicable as we see a different dynamic. We looked at the comprehensive plan, just making sure that the ordinance proposed would align with that. So we have, these are just some of the items that come directly verbatim from the comprehensive plan, but the main idea here is that the comprehensive plan is pretty clear on wanting to make sure that all neighborhoods have a diverse mix of housing opportunities for renters and homeowners. Very strongly worded about identifying and removing barriers for aging in place. About adopting zoning and other regulations for maintaining and increasing housing diversity, having mixed income neighborhoods, and as well as ensuring that affordable housing options are provided in all cities. These are just some of the examples that come from the sections, the housing sections of the comprehensive plan. One more that didn't make it on there, but there is a section, I believe it's section 8 of these strategies for the housing diversity and choice section of the comprehensive plan, which refers to identifying zoning and design standards that are contextual to existing neighborhoods to find ways of providing additional housing options. We're just going to go through a couple maps. This is zoning districts by their general category. So we've kind of lumped some of the zoning districts together just so you can see where they are scattered throughout the city. You'll see in yellow where the single unit zones are. The orange is the 2 unit zones. Blue is kind of the mixed use. The gray is the industrial, and green would be, land conservation. So when we look at single unit dwellings, and the reason we kind of point this out is because the way the ordinance is written is that the accessory dwelling unit would be accessory or secondary to a single unit detached dwelling. So this is a map showing where single unit dwellings are across the city. You can see that they are spread out, and these aren't just detached, but it's kind of hard to parse those two apart. But you can see that single unit dwellings are located across the city, but obviously they tend to land in single unit zoning districts. We also have non-conforming existing dwelling units in single unit zones. So all the red dots, red squares there on the map show that they are non-conforming residential properties within single unit zones. In other words, just showing that the characters of the community, they change, they adapt over time. A lot of these areas have seen ADUs to some extent, as they generally predate modern zoning codes. Here we have the percentage of the population and above. So if we look at 30% and above, that's the darker red color. We can see where we have a larger population of seniors living, typically in where there are single unit dwellings, also where there are single unit zoning districts. So by providing accessory dwelling units as a potential option, you'd be able to, it kind of selectively targets as well the aging population that might want to age in place. Here we have the percentage of housing owners versus renters occupied. So you can see it kind of aligns very similarly with the previous map, where the ownership, again, kind of corresponds to some of the older populations. Here we have a map of the cost burden owner occupied households. So you can see that the level of households that are cost burden, which means that they spend 30% or more of their income on housing, gets to be quite significant in different parts of the city. Unfortunately, we can see that it really affects everywhere in the city. So again, this is just accessory dwelling units are an option to kind of alleviate some of those cost burden costs by providing another means to have a secondary means of income. The proposed ordinance itself, so currently accessory dwelling units are listed in the permitted use table, but all the cells are currently blank, meaning it's not permitted anywhere until the council takes action to add it. So what is proposed is to add them as accessory in all zoning districts except for the I1 and I2, which are the industrial districts and the land conservation district. Some of the additional permitting requirements that are in the ordinance are that the ADU has to be accessory to a single unit detached dwelling, that no more than one ADU is allowed per lot. The limit to the square footage or the size that an ADU can be is 800 square feet. There are limits on the height, setbacks, and lot coverage, among other dimensional and bulk standards within the code. So it'd be treated in a lot of ways either similar to an existing principal structure or like a garage, other accessory structures. And it has to be primary accessory unit the primary or accessory unit has to be owner occupied. There's also a stipulation in the ordinance that the the accessory dwelling unit cannot be leased for like a short-term rental basis. And then one thing we had forgot to add there, but it had been mentioned by the fire department, there is a provision in the code as well that requires a maximum distance from the street frontage to the back of the back wall of a detached ADU of 150 feet. And that was put in place to help ensure there's no issues with getting fire safety to where someone might be living in an accessory dwelling unit. Happy to take any questions on that.
Not for me on the board. Any board members have questions?
I have a couple. One is the owner of the primary structure has to be the owner of the dwelling unit. What happens if the owner changes? What would happen if someone sold the main structure?
Yeah, so that's so the new person would have to get rental occupancy permit, but it'd have to be owner occupied in order for them to maintain the accessory dwelling unit. So if it wasn't under the provisions as it's written now, they wouldn't be able to use the secondary or detached unit if they weren't occupying that as their principal unit.
Okay, so if there was someone already renting it, they'd have to leave.
Yeah, so if someone else is buying it, they'd have to terminate that if they didn't choose to live there. Yeah.
And my question, 150 feet of travel distance, that's just as a person walks from the street to the.
Yep. Yeah, essentially a straight line.
Okay.
I had a question on sort of more denser neighborhoods. So a lot of these examples really were about detached housing.
Mm-hmm.
In cases where there are row houses, I saw that there was an option for incorporating an accessory unit within the building. So.
Yeah, so it gets a little complicated there. Basically, the ADUs would only be allowed in the single unit dwelling detached structures. Mm-hmm. So think of like structures like we see out here, you would not be able to put an ADU in there because it would be considered or defined as townhouse structures. Mm-hmm. And the definition of what's a townhouse structure versus what's a detached depends on the 3.5 feet or more basically to the property line essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a missed opportunity in terms of neighborhoods that have density itself. There's a lot of opportunities in place for aging families to move in, and to not categorize it and to not get that benefit might limit some of those potential benefits.
I just want to expound on her question a little bit. I understand what you're saying about the townhouse, but just using your example right there, that townhouse has an empty lot next to it. If they own the lot, can they still take advantage of this?
No, because they would still, under the way the code's currently written, they would be defined as a townhouse structure.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that there certainly are a lot of codes out there where they expand that, so they expand it where there's more than one ADU allowed, or there's an ADU is allowed for two-family, whether, detached or attached. I think the main component that I believe was trying to get through with this ordinance was trying to allow a different housing option in certain neighborhoods, essentially, where there's more detached structures.
That makes sense, but then at the other time, you're like missing an opportunity that naturally exists, right?
Yep.
So like, I appreciate that you're taking advantage of parcels that have lots and accessibility with 100 foot. But then there's a whole part of our neighborhood, our community that actually has townhouses that, 800 square feet gross is tiny to build that. Like, a lot of those townhouses naturally have that.
Yep.
Right? Building an 800 square feet gross, that means like exterior walls.
Yeah, it's
That's
a
pretty small.
relatively small
When
unit.
you take into account like insulation and energy code requirements, that's pretty tight to build. So like a lot of the buildings that already exist in place with those boundaries and scale are the townhouses.
Mhm.
So I think it's great if a larger lot line wants to take advantage of the accessory dwelling unit. I think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity to not consider it for the other townhouses. And if you think about, if you go back, that what was hard to read on the map is the percentage of townhouses versus not, Because those people would be missing out on those tax benefits, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to break down the exact percentage because there's no way to say exactly how many of these single-family properties are attached versus detached.
Right.
We can get a pretty good sense, but we don't have the exact numbers.
Yeah. Then the other question I have is that, so for the accessory dwelling units, how will ROPs be using? Like, in terms of just building department, as it is, we struggle a little bit with maintaining the ROP.
Yeah, so it would be done essentially the same way where someone is interested in having an ADU, they'd have to apply for a permit. The permit would, ideally have the questions reflecting a lot of what the ordinance is stipulating, so asking for the square footage, floor plans to match, things like that. They'd have to verify, that's owner occupied, and that would be checked, by the building department's office. A lot of times the enforcement end of that is handled more on like a complaint basis. So if we were to find out that someone's not, that the owner isn't actually using it as their primary residence, it's something that someone would have to notify the building department for them to become aware of that. From speaking with other municipalities, that really seems to be the case everywhere. It's kind of hard to, it's a very difficult component to enforce.
I do have a question regarding what can be done with that unit. Let's say the person who's intended for the person builds it, or is intended, they have an ailing, an aging parent passes away, then what can happen to that unit?
So it could still be rented out to someone?
So it can be turned into a month-to-month rental or a long-term rental?
Well, it wouldn't be a short-term rental, wouldn't be allowed,
Right.
but like a longer lease rental would be. Yeah. As long as it's still occupied, like the owner is still primarily occupied.
As long as it's owner occupied, okay.
Yeah, I will say that's a pretty big shift in a lot of, pretty much universally in any municipality that's adopting ADU regulations, is making sure they're moving away from like the family stipulations and definitions and making it more broader terms. One, just for legal reasons, but also it's the inability to enforce some of the things that are, if you're regulating it based on family relations, things like that.
What about basements? I did see that you mentioned it in the presentation, but is there a tie to, are we tweaking the definition of basements for ADUs in this application?
No, not specifically. If I understand your question correctly. The habitable space regulations or code regulations themselves will still be applicable. So just New York State and City of Albany code would still apply. So you would have to meet all these requirements plus any requirements that would be applicable under those codes.
Let's go to Shawty's example of a townhouse and opportunities for them. this won't affect folks with townhouses that may have basements that are unfinished, they want to turn into an apartment unit.
This would not, I mean,
That's a downside,
essentially under the code, and townhouses vary significantly, but if we were to take, let's say, a 3-story townhouse, presumably it's in a townhouse or mixed-use zoning district, which most of them are, you would be allowed to have up to 3 units if it's in a townhouse zoning district. So the idea is if you think about it, there's already a higher density or more units you can fit in there as long as it's like one per floor. But yeah, there wouldn't be that additional accessory dwelling unit on top of that, the way it's currently written.
So what I'm hearing is that you can achieve the same thing, just not using the accessory dwelling unit ordinance that's being proposed. You would go through just asking for maybe a conditional use permit in order to have that extra dwelling.
That's the given, but the downside is
Can't use the tax
that you
credit.
can't use tax credits.
Yeah.
And I think it's great for the rest of the city of Albany. I think that's a really important thing to consider with housing costs, but I also think you gotta consider that there is infrastructure that already naturally has those setups, right? And in some cases, it's true, there's 3 units and the owner doesn't live in it, doesn't comply with that. But there are some cases where people live in townhouses that are looking to expand on who lives below the family. Missing on that conversion, right?
The program, the tax program is funded through the state though.
Yes, so there's essentially 2 different things that come up. There's a tax exemption that the county is looking at, but there's also a tax exemption through New York State. So if the city were to opt in, it's 421P2 is the technical term, but it's basically if you were to opt in, you'd get the amount of money. I think it's if you invest basically like $3,000 or more into a structure and it's only for new accessory dwelling units, you can take off that increase of value off your tax assessment for a period of, I believe, 10 years, which obviously helps a lot, especially for detached structures because construction, just generally speaking, for anything right now is quite expensive. So, we're not, from what we've seen through other municipalities, just our research, like you don't typically get a lot of people constructing brand new accessory detached dwelling units. It's usually more of a conversion or something interior to the property.
That's different than the tax exemption is different than the +1 program.
Yeah, the +1 program is more of like basically more of like a grant that would be provided. Troy has utilized that, I think, for 15, or maybe in the middle of doing that, but for 15 townhouses, accessory dwelling units. But yeah, essentially you can utilize that funding. That's another way that their state is trying to incentivize that creation. I know for ones that have opted into the +1 ADU program, there's at least 25 municipalities across the state, and it's been growing more recently.
We have one comment. Councilor, I think you want to speak on this one?
Thank you. I was not used to the new setup, and I didn't know about logging in ahead of time, so I apologize. Sure.
Mr. Mann, because you speak for a wider constituent base, instead of the 3 minutes we give, you have 6.
Thank you. And I'm going to try to. We had an hour-and-a-half meeting. I'm on the planning committee and member, and it was over an hour and a half. And Lobby was there and did the presentation. We invited Rick LaJoy, Joe Coffey from the Water Department, Rick LaJoy, of course, from Codes. We had Chief Gregory there. I'm trying to think of who else, but I don't want to waste my 6 minutes trying to remember. But what I'd like to do is send you all the YouTube video of that meeting, and if you can even kind of speed through it. I think it's important because there was a lot of problems that were brought up. And there was some legal problems, and I know the council was there, and I know Robert McGee was there, and I talked to him yesterday at our meeting. There's a lot of questions. Number one is the enforcement. How do we make sure? Rick LaJoy said he cannot enforce, who's living in the ADU, if they're owner occupied or not. We do have a grouper law on the books in Albany. It's unenforceable. It's never been enforced. So we got to be careful what we put on the books as law that if we can't enforce it or make sure that we're compliant. There's a, I don't even know where to begin. I know one of the things was brought up was Colony, and I looked into Colony on their E-code. You have to be a relative. You cannot rent to somebody. And if the relative dies or you sell the house, the ADU has to be taken down. Also, the ADU has to be attached to the main structure, and that's what Chief Gregory was talking about. When you have that separate structure, it's access to that to get the fire out. It's also access to get a stretcher in and get people out. So I should have started off with, we got to make this work. And, you know, I saw this was on the agenda, and I'm really surprised because we're still trying to work it out on council to get the right language and get, you know, figure out what's going on. I know there's public opinion out there on Nextdoor, on Facebook. A lot of people I know in the Uptown wards are upset because they bought their house thinking that this is a one-family zone and that, you know, there's not going to be extra accessory. One of the things I brought up, one of my concerns is parking. Different parts of the city, we have parking problems. Now, somebody said, well, not everybody drives, but in the Uptown wards, yes, we do drive, and that's the only way you can get around. We don't have really good public transit. In Colony, to put up an ADU, you have to have 2 off-street parking spots. So that's something to look at. And I told Avi that I try to find Troy's, I try to find some of the other ones, but I do have a full-time job. I didn't have a chance to research it. The council, our attorneys is part-time. We're down one of the research staff. We're kind of really booked up. So there needs to be investigation. And all I'm asking is, please wait till the council figures out what we're going to do before making a recommendation. And I mean, that's the only thing I can bring. I mean, it is important. I'd like to see more if a parent or, you know, elderly person wants to stay with the child. And we have the other thing too, where a child finishes college and they can't find a place to live. They like our town. They want to stay here. We want to keep them. I mean, I have no doubt, but I want to make sure we move forward that we are doing the right thing, okay? Now, I'm going to throw in, even before this came up, this legislation, I proposed legislation to allow cottage courts, where you have many houses, probably 800 feet, maybe a little bit less, around a courtyard. And it would be owner occupied, where we would sell, that you're not renting. And that's an important thing that we want to see home ownership, because one of the biggest complaints we hear at the council is the rent goes up and people are forced out. So I know that he's working on that, but this kind of jumped in, and I don't know how, but it did. What else do I want to say that's important? It's the short-term rentals is another problem in our city that we don't have legislation on. State now has a registry that the county has to opt out of. It's super important that we do something about these short-term rentals. We're having a big problem in the 15th floor. I can tell you, there's over 400 units that are not being used for these short-term rentals. Those 400 units could be people living long-term. So we need to have some kind of legislation, and I'm being kind of conservative on that number. There's probably a lot more, because every day there's more and more people doing it. My big concern with the ADUs is people will try to use them as short-term rentals, and how do you enforce it? How do you know somebody's not there all the time? Real fast, another fast point, the ROP. When you're related, you don't need to get an ROP. You can rent out without having an ROP. So there's no mechanism out there that we can track, you know, who's staying in these units. So I appreciate the time. I just say, hang on, let us work it out in the council with the planning committee, and then, you know, be glad to bring you the good legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Board, do we have any questions for Councilman in his interaction with the planning committee of the council? All right, are there any additional comments? Do we need to, since staff presented, do we need to have additional staff comments, any comments from council on this one?
I have no comments unless the board has any questions.
None. I believe the action for us is to determine a recommendation to the council, so even what we do here is ultimately a cursory thing to the council who will be the ultimate decision maker on these type of zoning text amendments. So is there a motion for a favorable recommendation to the common council for zoning text amendment section 375-505-20, zoning text amendment number 0023, which was presented by Bobby today in the meeting? Is there a motion?
No one's willing.
I mean, I'm the chair, usually the chair doesn't move, but I shall move to make a favorable recommendation to, the common council. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right. So please say that you two.
Yeah.
Yeah, not now.
Okay. No, I understand, but I would have liked that you would have waited, but I understand.
Next on the agenda is the conditional use permit for 154 Livingston Ave. The applicant is Taylor Battleground Living LLC. Gretchen Hoffman
Yes,
is on.
She's on speaker.
Absolutely.
You're okay, Vanessa?
Huh?
Could you say something again?
hello.
Okay.
We can hear you.
The floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Gretchen, and we are looking to, we're requesting a conditional use permit to convert our townhouse with 2 units to a townhouse with 3 units. It's 154 Livingston Ave. It's in a zone that definitely is consistent with 2 and 3 units. We've been having some trouble renting the upper level because there's so much space. We have a lot of couples or, single moms with 1 child or 2 child that are looking to rent. But the way that we have it right now, there's just too much space there, really more than anyone needs. So we were looking to add a kitchen to the upper floor and make it into a 3 unit.
So, is it question time or is she done?
She does have a couple more slides.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I went through all of the application and made sure that everything is, it's in the right zoning district. There's enough square feet. There's 840 square feet on both the middle and the upper level. Sorry. It definitely is designed to maintain the character of the neighborhood. There will be no work done on the outside of the building. It's only on the inside. So it will definitely stay consistent with everything going on the street. It will be in sync with all the existing properties and the cohesion of the community. It won't be a big project. We anticipate very little traffic or garbage for that matter. It will, no noise or disturbance really to the community at all. I don't know if you want me to go over anything specifically, but.
That's good. Gretchen?
Any questions from the board on this?
I do have a question. So it looks like right now, the current configuration is that you have a basement as one apartment,
Yes,
have 2 floors like a duplex as another.
correct.
Get rid of the duplex
Mhm.
and put a full size, is it a 1 bedroom, it looks like?
Yes, then it would be a large 1 bedroom on the upper floor, and on the middle there would be a larger bedroom and a den, which could be, used as a smaller bedroom.
And so being that this is a duplex, are you doing construction to separate from, so there's no access by the upper floor tenant to the middle floor tenants?
The way the building is constructed, it's almost like it was set up to be a 3-unit in the first place. I'm not really sure what happened. It was just set up like this when we purchased it. So there really is, stairs and separate access to, there's a hallway and you can only get in the units, through and out through a door that will be separated from each unit. So.
So right now, in the townhouse, the double portion, the 2 floors, they use that hallway to get in and out of their own apartment?
Yep, there's one main front door, and then there is inside doors and a staircase, but it's a hallway with, separate entrances, both the upper and the middle floor.
Any additional questions from the board? Staff report?
Yes. So the project of the conversion of the top floor to a unit falls under type 2 action, so no additional actions required under seeker. This was not required to be referred to the Albany County Planning Board. There is evidence that the current building existing has been utilized as a 2 dwelling unit structure. The analysis of the block of Livingston Avenue, which is where this property is located, includes approximately 15 single unit structures, 36 2-unit structures, and about 5 3-unit structures, and a few vacant parcels as well. I mentioned that because the purpose, one which is 152 Livingston Avenue. The minimum lot area required for the conversion, it would be 1,150 square feet, where there is 2,145 square feet available. The building in question does contain the requisite stories to accommodate the 3 units, where each unit is 100% of the story. The proposed unit is approximately 840 square feet. The ground story of the building, typically under conversions, we've seen basement or garden level units being converted, but that does still apply here. So that's 66% above grade, where 50% is required. The trash storage area for the property is also being proposed by the applicant to be located in the rear of the building, outside of the public right of way.
Thank you. All right, so we have recommendation of approval with the conditions listed below. So refuse and recycling shall be stored outside of the public right of way and not visible from the sidewalk. Condition 1, condition 2, parking and or loading shall not be located within the side yard setback. Condition 3, parking and or loading shall not be located on the adjacent parcel known as 152 Livingston Avenue. Are there any questions? Do we have a motion on the approval with the conditions I just read? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the conditional use permit with the conditions aforementioned for 0091. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have also a conditional use permit for 110 North Pearl Street. The applicant is the First Church of Albany. This is for a conditional use permit for group living other for the temporary use of the third floor area of the parish house to operate as a cold blue shelter for people experiencing homelessness during extreme cold weather. Representing agent Peter Crasto Donald.
Thank you so much. So as mentioned, I'm Peter Crasto Donnelly. I'm the executive director of the Capital Area Council of Churches. We're the tenant of the First Church in Albany. We've operated the emergency overflow homeless shelter for over 20 years. We were formerly located at First Lutheran Church. They've needed to sell their building. We were looking for a new location, and the First Church of Albany was gracious enough to offer their space. We're going to ask for approval for our conditional use permit, so that way we can operate the shelter on the third floor of the First Church in Albany. The shelter space that we'll be occupying is about 2,700 space, 2,700 square feet. It's currently space that is underutilized. We house in this space up to 19 men from November to April, so we operate the shelter on a temporary basis, on a code blue basis. We have up to 6 employees at one time that may be in the building, and there are shelters within 3 other shelters that are within a mile of the First Church in Albany. So these services are something that are established in the community. We do work with the Department of Social Services, and we do work with the New York State Office of Temporary and Custodial Assistance to make sure that we're in compliance with everything that we need to be for operating. We do not anticipate any increase in noise, light, odors that extend beyond the property. I'll get to that in a moment, and we do not receive large deliveries. The big thing I want to share tonight is that what makes this special is hospitality. That is how we run our shelter. So one of the questions that we'll ask our guys is, would you like a cup of coffee? And we try to carry that through. You can see on the picture provided that we have hand-quilted blankets because we try to make it a very comfy and cozy space for the guys. We're very grateful to our network of member churches who provide food and meals, which also enhances and creates that warm and comforting space. Additionally, our shelter director will meet with each new guest, get to know them, and will follow up on any concerns. We also have a mechanism for getting guest feedback. I have a couple of notes from guests that I'd like to read to you in a few minutes. We refer guests to services. As a note, our program is a little more structured, so some shelters may allow guests to come in and out throughout the night. An example with our program is that at 10 o'clock, all guests need to be in. We don't typically, if you leave after 10 p.m., you're not admitted back in. Now we try to provide flexibility, so if someone had an evening job and needed to return, that's a different scenario. But we do try to have this structure, and we find that our guests really appreciate it. A couple examples of where we work to accommodate our guests. I mentioned the guests who work late, but also in the past we've had Muslim guests who needed space to pray, and we work to accommodate that. So we really try to work one-on-one with each of these guests. A key component to hospitality for us is safety. So when guests come to our program, we will check their belongings just to make sure that items do not come into the shelter that shouldn't be there, and that includes the metal detector. We also do not tolerate disrespectful or threatening behavior, but that's all an effort to create that safe space. We do have up to 19 men, but when we open, our goal isn't, we don't treat the men as numbers or as money. We take our time building up to that 19 men. We want to make sure that every man who's in that shelter feels comfortable and feels that it is a safe space for them. That said, some guests do not like our way of doing shelter, and by that, for some context, I mentioned that overnight piece where everyone needs to be in by 10 p.m. Some guests like to be able to come and go. There's other shelter programs that do that. So in those cases, we still want to extend hospitality. We work with our partners to find them housing elsewhere. The result is those who remain really enjoy their time in our shelter. They find it very safe, comfortable, and we do find that our shelter tends to house older men. So a few stories about our shelter that I wanted to share. We do have a guest with mental illness. We do work with other shelters, and we were told, this guest may or may not be a good fit. You weren't based on the mental illness, they've not been able to stay at other shelters. In our program, based on what we provide and how we operate, this guest has been very successful and has enjoyed being in our program. So just by offering that hospitality, we can provide guests with that safe space. And a place and they have a space in our shelter that they may not have at another shelter. A couple of comments. We had asked guests just to provide some feedback. This is something we do traditionally towards the end of the season, just to say, hey, how was your experience? Do you have any comments for us? So I just wanted to share a few of these. From one guest said, my experience here in this overflow shelter is good, clean living quarters, a shower, a meal, staff is fair, thank God for somewhere to go. Another guest shared, I think this is a great place. It's helping me. The staff is wonderful. The guest in this case comments that they think this place should stay open year round. For co-flu, so many of our guests when we hit April were not able to continue staying open, and they wish that we could. One final comment from the guest, the overflow shelter
Sit, please.
Good evening. As Peter said, I'm Reverend Trey Churpak. I serve as the Associate Minister of the First Church in Albany. Our senior pastor, Reverend Dr. Shana Walston, says hello, as well as the members of our consistory. I'm glad that Peter went through all the technical things. Him and his team have been just stellar at working with you all, the county, the state, all our different agencies and staff. And I thought my comments tonight would be mostly about why would a church do this? And for us, it's an exercise of our faith. Next week is Holy Week, and so Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday is the most holy time for us, and we wonder why Jesus did what he did. And to get us ready for that, we have 40 days of Lent, where we do different acts of justice, we do different acts of prayer, and one of them is fasting. I have not been very good at fasting this year, but the prophet Isaiah talks about God's fasting. And he says in chapter 58, "Is this not the fast that I give you, but to clothe the naked, to house those who are houseless, and to feed those who are hungry amongst you? And when you do, your gloom of the city will become like the noonday." And that's why we are excited to be partnering with the Catholic Area Council of Churches. So many volunteers make this happen, as well as wonderful staff members, Pam, who's the coordinator. And just to see guys come in, a couple nights ago, I drove by at night and I saw Pam helping out with someone, and it was amazing to see that happening. So I want to just commend all those who have helped process this. I also want to say that it's really nice that other churches are involved. And I want to say a special thanks to Jim Fultz, the president of our board of trustees, as well as another trustee member, Becky Mondor, as they have championed this. And, yeah.
Thank you very much. Any follow-up questions from the board? If not, we can move to staff.
You're welcome. Okay, so as was mentioned, the property is primarily used as religious institution. That's the primary use. The structure was originally built in 1900. So First Church Albany owns the subject property as well as an adjacent 98-106 North Pearl, which is used as an off-street surface parking lot operated by a separate company, as well as One Clinton Place, which is used as an off-street surface parking lot for employees and volunteers of the church, specifically during kind of more business hours. The project is classified as a type 2 action under seeker, so no further action is needed. And the project was referred to the Albany County Planning Board for their March meeting. We received their recommendation, which was to defer to local consideration. Group living other as a use is a conditionally permitted use in the MUDT. The use specific standards is that no other facility shall be located within 500 feet. As Peter mentioned, there are some uses within less than half a mile, but that's far exceeds the 500 feet limit. So it's fine under those rules. The project does not need to comply with dimensional requirements, as no new principal or accessory structures are proposed, and there's no increase to maximum impervious surface areas. The MUDT is exempt from off-street parking requirements, and the project proposal does not include development or redevelopment of a structure, but the applicant does provide off-street parking via separate parcel, as I mentioned, during off hours. So during the operational hours of the Code Blue Shelter, that separate parking area would be available to volunteers or employees. And they provided some estimated vehicle traffic associated with the use in their application. They estimate probably 2 to 3 staff vehicles, so pretty minimal use. I think that's all we had. We had a recommended approval with one condition, that the operation of use group living other is limited to the timing as described by the CACC from November to April and in accordance with New York State Code Blue Shelter Protocol.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve with condition number 1 as listed on the screen, the conditional use permit number 2025-01? Is there a motion? Someone. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded to approved with the condition listed on the screen for the conditional use permit. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Next. All right, development plan review, conditional use permit for 126 State Street, CIDC Albany Center, BBL Construction Services. Mr. Hirschberg is the representing agent. I see his brass with him. This proposal is for the construction of 57,499 square foot expansion of the existing 126 State Street building and a portion of the adjacent parking lot located at 120 State Street. Proposed expansion will be connected via a new enclosed 2,316 square foot pedestrian bridge to the existing Capitol Center, Albany Capitol Center building located at 55 Eagle. The proposal involves incidental partial demolition to the rear of the existing 126 State Street building. Our actions today are really about seeker, so presentation's all yours, Mr.
Start off and we go to the next slide and show the area. I think everybody knows where 126 State Street is. And this will allow a connection to ACC development. So next slide has existing conditions. There's actually two parking lots and a building in between and another building on State Street called 120 State Street. The next slide shows the building rendering. This is in the Howard Street facade. And the next one shows the nighttime. This is looking in at the courtyard from State Street. That's the nighttime rendering. Next is this is the building rendering looking across from the other side of State Street. You see 120 State Street there, and you see the glass building in the back, which is part of our new facade. And the next one is we have a site lighting plan. I don't know at any point, Brandon, when you want to jump in and add anything, feel free.
I don't think we will need.
Okay. This shows the site statistics, and it shows the lighting we tend to use. We're very concerned about lighting. Obviously, we want it to be lit well enough so that people can see. We don't want it to be too glaring. That's why we're using the smaller type of lights hanging over the courtyard. You have some wall pack units on the building. We have very little additional lighting because we get lighting from the street lights. So this site will be well lit, but we don't have to add an awful lot of new lighting. Next slide shows the utility plan, which is key to this area. We're in an area served by combined sewers. So we're very concerned about retaining stormwater, which is the next couple of slides, which I'll show you. We provide all the utilities are there, obviously. We have access to a number of telecommunication services, electric services, sewer, water, and gas are all available to us. And the next slide shows stormwater management plan, which is key to this issue. In order to manage stormwater, we're significantly reducing the flow from the site by using a blue roof on a portion of the building. And then we have the next slide shows a large storage structure, which is going to be built in the ground. It holds like 15,000 gallons worth of water. So water and let it out slowly after the storm subsides. And to clean the stormwater before it discharges the combined sewer, it sounds a little crazy. We're discharging the sewers in it, also sewage in it. But we're planning for the future. Eventually, this area may be separated in sewage, so we want to clean the stormwater. So we're using a hydrodynamic separator, which is the device shown on a plan, which will clean the stormwater before it discharges in the sewer. So all those are elements of our stormwater management plan. It's a very critical portion of our site plan. Next, we have, this is the courtyard landscaping plan. Very attractive landscaping plan. That'll be, the beautiful entrance from State Street goes right down the lower side of that. The upper side is a seating area. And there's an exit right into 126 State Street. When you come right in, you make a left turn, and you go right into 126 State Street. Next. This again is the view from State Street and the view from Howard Street. Those are the existing site photos. And this is from the adjacent parking garage. The next are some of the renderings of the site. You can see all of the materials being used there, a number of attractive different siding materials. The colors are muted. We're not using red or bright green or any colors like that. They're very grays and browns and those sort of facilities. We think it looks very good on the site. The next site plan shows this is the cross section. You can see from State Street, you got an area, and then you come back to Howard Street. So again, that shows the building and cross section. They all are buildings on the right-hand side. Those are new facilities being built. Next. This is the exhibition level, which is a large exhibition space. And it occupies that entire area with support services all around it. And we have the next level, which is the meeting level. It's a number of meeting rooms and some offices. And is meant to maintain the facility. You can see on the lower left of that plan, going off at an angle, is the bridge across Howard Street. That connects it to the Albany Convention Center. And that's the main element here. We're making it high enough that there's no impediment to fire trucks or any other trucks going underneath it. Which led us to a slightly higher floor grade than we normally would have made the first floor, but it works out quite well. Next is the main level plan, which is a whole bunch of needs of the facility. It gives us office space and a whole bunch of other needs for maintaining the Albany Convention Center Edition, which is called ACCA, Albany Convention Center Edition is what we call it, a very catchy name. Next is request for public comments.
Any comments from the board? We reviewed this one extensively last go around. Saw there were some prettier versions of pictures that were included in this go around. Any additional questions? Go ahead, Charlie.
I don't have any of this section.
Okay, how about Is this anything?
I'm good.
Me too. All right, staff, let's get it.
Okay. So as Dan mentioned, obviously there's the existing office building with parallel off-street parking, access via Howard Street currently. The parking area is screened via brick wall. 120 State Street also has an existing office building with off-street parking, accessed via the rear, controlled gate at Howard Street. The proposal includes a lot modification, which an application has been submitted. So I think we're reviewing that, and that would be approved administratively. The project is located in the HRO and ARO, which requires certificate of appropriateness reviewed by the HRC. They're on the agenda for Thursday's HRC meeting, and they have been before the board or the commission previously. The application requires a CUP because the use exceeds 15,000 square feet gross floor area, and the app has been provided. That's why there's a public hearing tonight. The project was referred to the Albany County Planning Board in January with the recommendation that the local approval include review by the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation for potential impacts on archaeological and historic resources, which it has been. There's been ongoing communication with the project team. We received, multiple communications, but the end of it is that we've received kind of 2 letters of significance. So you could turn to the next slide. The project is classified as type 1 action under seeker, and in February, the planning board sought lead agency, after which we initiated coordinated review, including with SHPO, as there's multiple reviewing boards as well as public funding involved in the project. We provided a drafted part 2 and 3 along with the supplemental document for the board's review and adoption. So we would recommend a negative declaration under seeker. As I mentioned, we did receive communication from SHPO specific to the rear demolition that included essentially their terminology for an MOU, right? So there are they acknowledge some mitigation measures would be incorporated into the plan overall. The project was referred to for city departmental comment in January and March. DGS essentially approves with right-of-way street opening permit and final MPT being needed. Department of Engineering notes that a grading permit would not be needed, that the protection of existing infrastructure is required, and that the applicant would require to coordinate with DGS for snow removal and street cleaning. Water Department outstanding comments related to revised water engineer report and sewer engineer report, and the BMP 9 and 12, that's to do with basically stormwater management, and the SWIP or basically stormwater management. The Albany County Department of Health and New York State DEC sewer extension to be filed, and the DOH 347, which is, as mentioned, the water quality. So there was some communication this morning with the Water Department and Hirschberg. So some of those comments were addressed, but not necessarily holistically. Division of Traffic Engineering has provided verbal comments, I believe, with the applicant. We haven't received any written comments necessarily, but we did receive a copy of the traffic impact evaluation. So we are aware of some recommended, I think probably you could speak more to that, but we're aware of some recommended mitigation impacts for the project, which we recommend incorporating into the project as a whole. Most of these we've been through previously. Second floor bridge across Howard Street would require an easement agreement, which their council has been working with our council. This can easily be a condition of final DPR approval. We did receive a waiver yesterday evening for the street amenities, as well as for the street trees. Otherwise, the most recent plan set that we had a curb cut along Lodge Street for 49 feet. We've been told this has been reduced down to 20 feet, which the maximum permitted is 20 feet for a double lane access width. So we would just want to see that reflected in a full revised plan set. As we mentioned, the lot modification is proposed and the application has been provided. It's possible that a cross connection easement would be needed for those two parking areas or the kind of curb access between Lodge Street and Howard. Trash storage, mechanical equipment, there's locations identified. There's maybe some slight clarification needed on that. And then just the following, I think, is primarily addressed with HRC for the building and streetscape design. Exterior lighting, Dan mentioned, there is some inclusion of that on the landscaping sheet. We did request photometric or foot candle of that as well. There's just one detail provided, so it's unclear if there are additional lights included. And then lastly, the signage. Signage appears in renderings, so we're just confirming again that if any signage is proposed, it will require a separate sign permit. We can discuss more, or we can go to the recommended action. That's my last slide on the staff notes.
Recommended action.
We recommend seeker negative declaration and to defer the DPR and CUP likely till May until such time that outstanding departmental comments have been addressed.
Are the outstanding departmental comments related to some of the conversations we had relating to consideration, and this is maybe not your technical expertise, but more of like a global question is that the Architecture Convention Center, and it does great for the use of conventions but what does this building provide back to the city of Albany? Are there opportunities to integrate in your outside landscaping more of a accessible place where people from the city of Albany can hang out, work there, maybe get a cup of coffee there? Or is it strictly for the use of the convention center?
So you brought this up at the last meeting.
Yeah.
And we had promised that we would bring Monica, so Monica
You're Monica.
Krzyzewski is
I'm
the
Monica.
executive director, yeah, so just to talk about it, you mentioned courtyard.
Or just
amongst other things.
amongst other things, you know, we have a convention center, we have now, another means to not walk on the sidewalk with people, you know, to access for the convention center. What are some ways that we can integrate within City of Albany as a public space?
So-
encourages that?
Sure, so, we do have a convention center, and it is a severely smaller convention center that was originally designed for Liberty Park. It was downsized, obviously, due to, funding allocated by New York State. This actually brings the, convention center up to its original intended size. And I'm gonna address the size first. We have one already, and why do we need a second extension? Large scale convention centers, and we're not even large scale, like we're in the middle of the pack, amongst New York State facilities. There are,
Or in a small space?
right. There's much larger than us. One of the pieces of that as well is the size of what we do doesn't allow us to compete on a larger market. And I'm saying larger market, like northeast, of the United States, like our northeastern corridor, because of the fact of our size, but also more importantly, is we don't have 3 separate areas and we don't have enough meeting rooms. We only have 5 meeting rooms now, potentially 6 if you use the Capitol Room, which is the next room right off to the right when you walk in the doors. Yep, so that is really undersized for the kind of market that we are able to compete in because of our quality. We market ourselves as affordable luxury, therefore allowing us to be able to compete in smart meeting networks and the small meeting network. In the last year, we've won some significant awards in the industry as well too. And the other piece of that is a third separate. So usually convention centers will have 3 pieces. They'll have meeting rooms, they'll have exhibit hall, and then usually have some sort of a ballroom component. We have 2, and we have undersized 2. So therefore, by being able to take the opportunity, since the facility opened in 2017, we knew at that point in time we were still too small. There was an original plan before Duncan retired to actually go go east. Go east on the facility to go where that defunct parking garage is that the county has purchased and they're out doing an RFI for. So to actually go east and add a meeting room space versus like the third leg of the existing ballroom. When we found out that building, we went to go look to see if we could purchase that building, and found out that the county had already put an offer in. So that's when we realized that we would potentially be able to grab 126th Street.
I think
So-
what you're doing is great.
Yep, so
I just
the,
wanna-
sure, so the other piece of that too is, what are we doing for Albany? We're preserving a historic building. We're actually gonna utilize that historic building as facility space. We're also, providing an opportunity to create placemaking along State Street, which none exists now with that courtyard. I think we will need to see, we anticipate a 18-month construction period. So we're looking at March of 2027 as our grand opening, which ironically is also our 10-year anniversary, from when we opened the doors the first time. I think what we need to do also is, see what our street life is about at that point in time, our environment, okay?
When it
Opens, right? There's a lot in the pipeline of what Albany is working on doing, and as far as, you know, any issues or anything like that we might have. I think how we look to program that, let's go back to particularly the courtyard at this point in time, because that is my favorite spot in this entire facility, is that courtyard. Because I am a placemaker at heart. Most people know my background. I come from the city of Troy. I've worked in the city of Troy since 1997. I was the deputy mayor there and also did economic development. I also ran the farmers market in Troy for a long time. So streetscape and placemaking is super important to me because I know what it can do to your community. Sure. We're missing that right now on State Street. So even if somebody's walking up State Street, just to be able to walk past the space that's green, to give people that little bit of a moment of, it's like when you walk into River Garden Studio downtown on Columbia Street, you just kind of like that immediate like, okay, everybody can take a breath. We want to provide that opportunity along State Street, but we also want to be able to provide an area for our clients, but also the public, if we can make sure that it's respected, right? It's a significant investment into the facility. So we want to make sure that there are limits. We have talked to the zone about maybe looking at, are there ways that we can program the space on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Maybe it's First Fridays, maybe it's we put music there, we do those things. We already talked about doing the hot chocolate stroll and actually incorporating ourselves into the community. When I was hired by the board, they wanted to take a more outward approach to what we do versus an inward operational approach. They want us to be more community-minded, so that's what my work is doing. As far as what else we do for the community, we just recently passed a community sponsorship program where if there are local neighborhood not-for-profits or through agencies, right, through fiscal agencies, we will actually provide a sponsorship. I'm trying to look for the right word. A sponsorship for that group to come in and be able to use the Capital Center. We think it's really important. We follow the outline of what is already in our enabling legislation. You have to give 1 mile of the Capital Center. So, like for example, Albany Trust, Albany Trust. Nope, the Albany
Community Land Bank?
Trust.
Oh.
They're the ones who did I just totally forgot their name. They just did the gift giveaway over the holidays. So we were able to donate the space for all of the families to come through, pick up their gifts for essentially Toys for Tots. And that was a partnership that we worked with them. They were able to utilize the space and then they were able to get raise funds like that. So we modeled it similarly after the foundation program that the MVP Center has.
So I think it's a great role to think of. You're placemaking, you're preserving a building, you're reintegrating it into the city, and also providing an opportunity for people to come into with this missing program that you really understand. And I like the start of some of the ideas that you're describing and thinking about how to integrate them into development. I think it's really important, and you would be, like an active stakeholder in that process.
Absolutely, and that's my goal, is that we're doing really good work with the county right now in the interaction between the MVP Center and us, and actually, I would like to report that OGS has actually been a really good partner with, in addition to this Albany funding that everybody's hearing about, there's an active approach from OGS to come off the hill, and I say that because I'm Troy and RPI, right? Everybody wants them to come off the hill. So they're looking for ways to integrate the community into their facility, but also how do they get people out. The walkway is one of the big pieces. I've been talking to the Albany Center Gallery about artwork, how we incorporate artwork and culture into not only the walkway, but also our community. There's some great opportunities coming up where we can actually do some new partnerships with them and be able to highlight our local artists, but also our placemaking and photographic opportunities throughout the city, because the more people who talk about the positive sides of Albany, the better the trajectory will start to swing. I think also the biggest thing too to remember, and it's also been one of the pieces as we've been working on the program in this facility, is that we can have, obviously the goal for what our work is to bring bigger clients in, longer, higher attendees, longer duration, right? Heads and beds at the hotel rooms, because that is what makes everybody the extra sales tax and the hot tax and all the other things that funds all those stuff. The other piece of this though too is that the beauty of this design allows us to actually have 2 events going on at once, potentially 3 events going on at once, potentially 4 events going on at once. With circulation of that, not everybody is going to walk through that walkway, the elevated walkway. There are people who are going to come in off the State Street entrance, and that's why I've been super adamant about that secondary entrance off of the front of the building and the handicap accessible building, because there is no handicap accessibility unless you go through the courtyard. And if there's an event in the courtyard, you don't want people using that as an entrance to the other space. So we're really mindful of how that interaction is, but if that happens, there's going to be people who are walking the streets in order to get to their conference versus coming up to the garage or through the walkway. Being mindful of that, we've been working with county to kind of maybe come up, and also the city is aware of it too, maybe there's a convention district, and I hate that term, but there's some district concepts where we can get some streetscape improvements and walkability and start looking at some of those things in that district area. I know with CrossFit coming in, that's certainly something that's top of mind, but it's also a long-term plan as well too. So really trying to integrate the walkability, but also the accessibility and the safety aspect of that. We want people to be able to walk down Howard or Beaver or Wendell and feel safe in that action and that decision making.
Having population there helps.
Absolutely.
And not making it.
Be on streets, right? Be on streets. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Thank you.
Right. Any additional questions? We have one major action today, which is negative declaration for the seeker. Is there a motion for a negative dec?
So moved.
Second. All right. All in favor of the negative declaration for seeker, say aye. Aye. And Council, I don't know, do we need a formal motion to defer to the next meeting, or can we just defer to the next meeting?
You can just defer to the next meeting. You're good.
Yeah.
So we shall see you soon.
Thank you.
See us again.
All right, we're winding down here.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. You don't need, do we need quorum to close the meeting if for the conference meeting? Like, do we need to formally close it? Do you wanna think about that for a second?
Yeah. We've got 20 minutes, right?
Yeah. 15.
Good. It's good.
15. Yeah.
Okay. I'll be able to find it.
Okay. Maybe. We're wondering if we need quorum to be able to close the meeting period.
I'm just gonna confirm that. We
There's
got,
also the hearing. This is a public hearing item.
this is an item that requires, when do you have to go, Shadi?
I pick up my kid at 7. I have to leave at 7:45.
Okay. I will have an answer
I think we'll make
before then.
So we got a zoning map amendment for 540 Myrtle Avenue. Vegas South Lake LLC, zoning map amendment for 540 Myrtle Avenue from an R2 unit to an RM multi-unit to allow for a conversion to a 3-unit dwelling. There's no action today, but we want to get this review, so the floor is yours.
Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Alexandra Pinocchio. I am an attorney with Bartlett, Holmes, Stewart and Rhodes. We represent the applicant, which is Vidnish South Lake LLC. I have with me Harshad, who is involved in the project with the members of the LLC. Just briefly, as the chairman said, we are looking to change the zoning district that applies to this property, which is 540 Myrtle Avenue in Albany. It currently is in the R2 zoning district, but it borders the RM zoning district, as you can see. It's right where the star is. There's a close-up one right there. And so in the RM district, you can have up to a set number of, you can have more than 2, I should say. Each unit has to be 750 square feet. The square footage of the house, not including the basement, is 3,000 square feet. So, and I apologize for this error. Our application indicated up to 3. That is still under consideration, and so I just wanted to clarify with the board that the hope and expectation is that by rezoning this parcel, the property could be used in conformity with the zoning code, but subject to that 750 square foot restriction, but not limited to 3. Currently, development plans have not been finalized, mainly because of the fact that this is our first step. We can go to the next one, some things to consider.
This is just the site plan survey that was provided with our application. There is no off-street parking. This is a previous residential area. Myrtle Avenue is one way, as you can see on the map. And so this is in the application packet if people want to look at it. So as I had mentioned, our hope is to extend the RM zoning district, of which our property borders. By extending this zoning district to apply to this parcel, it would allow us to increase the dwelling units inside of that structure while maintaining that historic structure as well as the character of the neighborhood. It increases the range of housing choices. It still allows for a walkable area in a neighborhood that has a lot of single-family homes and or two-dwelling homes. The benefit of this is that if you look on Google Maps, the Albany Law School as well as the Medical College and Psychology, they're all really close to it, and so this would support housing choices for higher education students. It would also support diverse communities by providing mixed income housing, because if it was rezoned, you would still be right next to the R2, but this would also allow, more families, more single individuals, students, couples, anything like that, and so it would promote diversity in the local community. These are the general standards under which we asked you. This comes from the code, and so I just wanted to talk about how our project fits into them. I'd already touched on some of these points, but in the comprehensive plan, something that is mentioned is that the city of Albany wants to have balanced land use distribution across the city. And I wanted to emphasize that because this parcel is adjacent to the RM district, it wouldn't be spot zoning. It would just extend the border a little bit, and so it wouldn't be a single parcel, surrounded by the R2. It would remain in conformity with the general neighborhood structure and the zoning map. I mentioned the increase in housing choices. It is next to the R2 district, and it borders the RM, and so it just increases, for more units, and so that helps meet the housing shortage in the city of Albany. And as I mentioned before, it is a resource for students of higher education. The University of Albany itself as an undergrad is also there. This would not conflict with other provisions, nor are there conditions that have changed, and so those are not applicable. Well, I would argue that they're not applicable to our project. I've already mentioned these things, but this is another item for your consideration, that the general standards require that there be compatible land use and efficient development in a logical and orderly development pattern. Again, because it borders the RM district, it would not be inconsistent with that general review standard, because it would be no spot zoning, there's no site development, it would all be internal to the dwelling structure. The actual structure itself is not going to change, so there wouldn't be character. I can go back on these things. The last item under the general standards for a zoning map amendment is that is the board to consider whether there's a significant adverse impact on the natural environment. As I just stated, there is no site development to the parcel itself. Everything will be internal to, or the reason why we would like to be zoned as an RM is that everything will be internal to that structure. Like I said, there's no change in the neighborhood. Because the property borders the RM district, and because the number of parcels being zoned as an RM that could occur, right now, like I said, 3,000 square feet, not including the basement, is 4 dwelling units under the code. There would not be a significant increase in stormwater, noise, or traffic. Like I said, this Myrtle Avenue is already one way. And even if there were additional cars, there's also public transportation nearby. That area is served by multiple bus lines. and, there would not be an impact there are no wetlands, there is no natural vegetation, it is already developed, and so it's not going to have an impact on, the surrounding area and, the natural environment. These are the additional standards that are required to be considered for a zoning map amendment. This first one is similar to the general standards, talking about the compatibility of the surrounding land use. The surrounding land use, as I mentioned, for this parcel is R2 and RM, and there are multi-unit residential units just next to this parcel, and so it really is not going to change the character of the neighborhood, the use of the neighborhood. And as I had said before, there's no spot zoning. The last consideration for the additional standards is the development served by existing public facilities, or will new ones be required? Because again, this dwelling structure, the overall one, is already in existence. It already is connected to stormwater. It already has stormwater runoff management, solid waste management. The streets are already there, and so there is not going to be a significant increase and or detract from the public facilities and all the other properties that they serve. Again, the maximum increase would be a few more dwelling units, and so by doing this, no schools, parks, police, fire department. It is close to, I believe, Washington Park. I'm not from the area, but and so nothing is going to be negatively impacted, because by zoning it as an RN, it does not allow for such a increased number of units that would have negative impact. And so I would happily open it up to questions and comments.
Do you have any good pictures of the house? Everything seems to be covered by a tree.
Yeah, that's what I'm
struggling with.
Sure, I don't have any with me, but I'm happy to submit them. I know that there's no action for this meeting, so I know we'll be back before you, so I'm happy to provide those in advance and talk about that.
Just a quick note for the board, just on the adjournment issue. Since this is still a hearing item, just to be safe, we'll adjourn this before Shadi goes. I'll say this as quickly as possible. And then the next item, which is just informal discussion, it is appropriate, according to the Department of State, I verified, for just you two to adjourn the actual meeting itself. You can still do that, since it's kind of just leaving anyway. But just to make sure this item gets properly dispensed with, we'll just have a motion to adjourn until the next regular meeting before you head out, and then there you go, you got it.
Let's go through the staff notes and then.
Okay. Just pulling from the tax records, it appears that the single unit attached was constructed in 1911 and has approximately 2,500 square footage of a living area. But if you did have any floor plans that you're working off, if you wanted to provide those, that could be helpful for the board's review as well. It appears to be a 2-story brick building with basement and porch. I'll just kind of run through these quicker. The building has been a rental unit according to the building department since at least 2017 or earlier, as there's been an active ROP. Based on map geo and tax data, within 250 feet of 540 Myrtle, there are approximately 11 single unit residential, 14 2-unit, 2 3-unit, and 16 multi-unit. So a bit of a mix of residential types. Some of the 3 units may have been captured under the multi-unit category. So to Jocelyn's earlier point about the kind of mix of residential types, there is somewhat of a mix in existence, even though if you go to the next slide, there is kind of an array of different existing residential zoning districts. As Alexandra mentioned, the 540 directly abuts 538 Myrtle Avenue, which is zoned RM, as well as all of South Lake Avenue as it abuts there. And there are patches of RM along Morris Street and Yates Street. If you want to go to the next slide too, Justine, and I'll talk through it. An area of RT on Park Avenue between South Lake and Quail Street. Also is interspersed with the R2, and then there's R1M along western side of Quail Street and Park Avenue. So you can kind of see there's a few different residential districts all in that area. 540 is the yellow square down in the middle. Alexandra provided additional supportive info for the general standards in her presentation. We just request some of that additional information be provided as separate from the PowerPoint. We noted there's some logic to the request given the adjacent existing RM. However, it could be make more sense basically to expand the rezoning from just one parcel to additional parcels, which may be more reasonable when considering the aforementioned standards. When you look at the different uses allowed between the RM and R2, there are more residential uses permitted by right and more dwelling units permitted per parcel. Some of the conditionally permitted residential uses in R2 have additional footnotes which could be restrictive, but generally the civic and institutional uses align and either not permitted, conditionally permitted, or permitted by right. So essentially there's not too much of a difference there. Out of the uses existing permitted in one of the two zoning districts, 39 uses maintain the same level allowance. So either they're conditionally permitted in both or permitted outright in both. 6 uses vary on the degree of allowance between the R2 and RM districts, and only 2 uses that are permitted or allowed as accessory use in RM are not permitted in R2. So essentially there's not too big of a difference between the permitted use table. Changing the zoning district would also alter the dimensional standard requirements, resulting in minor changes to required setbacks, max impervious lot coverage, and changes to allowable max height. And as mentioned, the R2 allows a maximum 2 dwelling units, whereas the RM allows 1 dwelling unit per 750 square feet, which can kind of be interchangeable depending on the size of the structure itself. Not currently recommending action, but if there's anything additional you'd like from the applicant.
One question before we jump on Shawty out there. There are driveways on both sides of the house. Are either of those part of your lot or?
No, there's no off-street parking because the property line is just on the other side, so those aren't directly on the other parcels and there's no easement or anything.
Okay.
Those photos will be helpful.
Second.
The photos will be helpful. Yeah, I'll make sure that we get those before our next meeting.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Just confirming, do you want us to come back next month or?
I think we're good with this.
So we'll just have a motion to adjourn project 00616 until the next regular meeting of the planning board.
It's been stated, moved, and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Is Nick here?
Thanks.
Let's talk to Nick. Shawty's got to go, but we should hear 43 second after. Are we able to send, Shawty, you can even listen in. I'll send you the
We could send you the recording after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I was looking forward to that. We're supposed to have a meeting now. Yes.
Almost done. Are you Nick?
I'm Nick.
And let's talk about 43 Second Ave. Tell us all about it. You want to do a conversion?
I will try to do it my first time that I'm on the board, so
All the, well, we don't like, especially we don't like.
last year we bought this beautiful school for the most, 42nd Avenue, school number 17, and then before we started, we searched about the zoning. We knew what kind of zoning it is, and we tried to figure out what our building code, whatever, to be able to turn in what we able to, in what we can turn the property itself. So the engineers were working with Mr. Snyder actively for the building itself, and then we determined that based on the square footage and the way how they proposed, the engineer proposed to do the construction interior, that we can have 34 units, but we are keeping it in 32. We're trying to keep the entire building itself from outside the exterior, as you can see right now, is historical, also in the historical zoning. We're trying to keep the character, because I bought the building because I like the building, how it looks like. And I know that I want to keep the character from the building, but it will be giving also the people surrounding who live over there. Some people went to school over there, and they will be loving to be able to enter, maybe to see how it will be turning as an apartment too. We're trying to keep everything what is historical, working also with the HRC, and trying to keep everything what is historical in town, and what we are able also to do more. This is the proposed site plan. So we have two front entrances on the second street, and we have the second egress on the back. This is basically the same layout what was from inside. Nothing changed at the hallways and main stairs. Besides the classrooms, none any more classrooms are divided between one apartment or two apartments depending on which floor it
Is it currently set up as classrooms inside? Has it been converted from a school already?
So I already put framing permits. We already have a lot of permits in place with electric, plumbing, electric. Besides
So this is a
conversion.
good job.
This was a good job. Now,
Got it.
I would love to show you some pictures. You were not able to see them. How we bought the building. This was like literally you see it in horror movies, something like this. The previous owner bought it and just took everything out of what was valuable and tried to destroy the building. So if I'm allowed just to get up and to show them to you, there are just some of them. I have a lot here.
I'll take a look. You continue presenting.
So just to add us information, 107 dumpsters, 30 yards of garbage, and a couple more coming. That what you see without the picture. So we are totally aware that we have neighborhoods. You guys will be trying to maintain the neighborhood. I want to maintain the main neighborhood. What we are adding already value because I see the interaction with the neighbors. I have Mr. Stevenson on the left side on the property who lives on 7th Street. He comes literally every day. I am every day on the job site. Comes every day, morning. Hey neighbor, how are you doing? So he's giving us live support on that, and we have also the interaction with different neighbors over there too. That everybody says, hey, good that somebody's investing in this part of the city, that somebody's pushing to get affordable, also affordable housing on that part. So we are also planning to look for the sorry, my English is not also so bad.
We understand. We understand what you're trying to do.
Housing authority, basically the affordable housing.
So you want to do affordable housing?
So most of the building, or maybe even the entire building.
Okay. So I guess the biggest questions, and I'm looking at the letter that we got in, growing up in this area, my father went to this school. So I understand the age and the historical, and the history that this school has, especially on this side of the, on the area. And the South End has been struggling with trying to deal with quality of life issues, and I'm saying that on a really mild level. So the biggest questions is, part of what's in the public comment in the letter we received is keeping tenants accountable for their actions, meaning that trying to keep down crime and all that other stuff that happens in the area, as well as the other quality of life issue, which is parking, because you are pretty landlocked. You have houses directly behind you and nothing on the side of you. So how would you deal with parking for 34 units in this area?
So the plan itself.
Or 32, sorry.
32. We asked for the engineer that he was reading also the building codes here and the regulation codes, so we should be not required so many parking to provide. But if it comes to, we'll be trying to address it. I'm not prepared to give you that answer at this moment here. So I will be ending up speaking to the engineer, and he will be then getting back to the comments, because I'm not an engineer myself.
No,
The only thing, what I want, what I will be requesting, because I know that you have also, there are also some older regulation what we need to respect about the recreation part, what is inside the building and outside. The thing, what I will be asking will be to get 3 parking spots in the lot, and if you can see all the behind it.
Which lot?
I have this like backyard part behind the building. Right.
Okay.
There's a narrow.
It's very narrow.
This is like 31 feet. 32 feet.
Is that part of your?
This mine.
Oh, okay.
32 feet by 70 feet, and I will be using at least 3 to 4 parking spots. They will be dedicated for utility, for emergency, and for utilities. So on the maintenance of the building.
Will you have any accessible units?
This is what the engineer is working on. That's why it is hard because I don't have pictures from that point.
No, it's fine.
We will have like 2 units of what will be accessible, but not, they will be using like ADA accessible, they using like this lift that go on the stair mounted.
Okay.
Is there an internal elevator?
No, that's not.
Will you be installing one? No.
Besides the small, like lifts for the wheelchair.
Yep.
On one side. So the anticipated construction time or length will be, as if everything goes as planned, is end of December 2025. The project funding we are not receiving, we are not requesting, and we are, besides for the state fund or federal funds, we are private. That's sort of that part. 32 units proposed consist of studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom apartment. I have also some pictures. This is how this should be looking like the second floor with the mezzanine. You have interest to see them?
Thank you. Very modern.
This is some of them.
Are these pictures in electronic form?
I think they're slightly different
Is there a way
staircases.
for him to upload the pictures so the whole
Yeah.
board?
There should be.
I have way more than that.
Yes, not all of them.
Yeah, we don't need all of them, but just give us the flavor.
I will. I can send.
On the inside.
It's in a state of disrepair, because it hasn't been used.
It was.
Yeah, they are.
But
The different stairs are
I
different.
took care of
The
the
floor.
frame structure, everything is taken care
That's
of.
what I was gonna ask you, how is like the foundation and everything?
Yeah, the engineer did all that, sometimes I had all the engineers, I have 2 different, I have 1 local engineer, inspecting it, who knew the building before.
Right.
And then I use my engineers from what different projects that we use.
I've ever seen.
Structural
No
Technical
engineer.
terminology.
Okay, thank you.
We have some staff comments, we're gonna move to Mary Ellen to send the written comments, right?
That's what I was asking questions off of, yeah.
All right, so let's turn over staff.
Just to go over some of the facts, and I'll put all the board comments, the written comment that we got, and our staff comments, and send it to you and Kelly, to address. So the project is classified as an unlisted action, so, the SEA, that the short environmental assessment form that's completed, needs to have some corrections in the updated form should be submitted. The application is required to be referred to the Albany County Planning Board, based on a threshold of where it's located within 500 feet of. That has not been done yet. Once we have all of the updated site plans and floor plans and elevations, we'll send that forward because they'll be looking for that. A point to note is that, once it's referred to the Albany County Planning Board, the board here is not able to take any action for 30 days. So we're supposed to give them 30 days to provide recommendation. So the sooner we can get the project over to them with the completed documents, the faster the process would move. As the applicant said, the project is located in the historic resources overlay, but also in the state, and is listed on the state and national register for historic places. Certificate of appropriateness application is required. They're working with the HRC, Historic Resources Commission, and they'll be on the agenda, upcoming agenda, not Thursday, I don't believe, but shortly thereafter. The elevation plans are outstanding. What we're looking for is the sectional dimensions to be submitted. I believe your engineer is working on it. Yes. The floor plans and the development plan review application, they don't identify yet the indoor-outdoor passive space and active recreation space. So the updated floor plans and the DPR application would have to address that when that's submitted. The other point to note is we're looking for the site plan to be updated to include these points. Existing and proposed setbacks, they're just not included within the site plan. Updated the existing and proposed site coverage statistics. The existing is, I believe, 73%, and the what's provided doesn't add up, so that needs updated. The updated street amenities, there's 3 street amenities are required along 2nd Avenue, 2 are required on Stephen Street, and 1 is required on Tunis Street. There are amenities that the project provides. There are, in some cases, trash cans provided, which along those 3 frontages, which are not recommended by DGS, Department of General Services. So an alternate street amenity would be required for 2nd Avenue and Stephen Street, other than trash cans. Bike rack, benches.
Planters.
Planters. The USDO requires a 5-foot sidewalk along each frontage. The existing sidewalk condition should be evaluated and the plans adjusted to include repair and replacement of sidewalks as needed. The site plans, like I said, should be revised to include sidewalk replacement from property line to property line, infill curbing as necessary, and add the appropriate city standard details to the plans. The landscaping and lighting plan sheet and the detail sheet within the site plan should be submitted. It should include the landscaping vegetation details that are existing or proposed, especially with the outside recreation area that we spoke about at the site visit. The requirement for street trees requires 1 street tree per 35 feet of street frontage. The 35 feet of frontage on 2nd Avenue, a total of 4 streets, the 4 street trees would be required. The 79 feet of frontage along Stephen Street would require 2 street trees, and the 65 feet of frontage along Tunis Street would require 2 street trees. You've submitted a waiver for the required trees along Stephen Street for frontage. Once we get the updated site plan, we'll review the waiver and they'll be in front of the board at the meeting. Chain link fence that's currently exists and has been mentioned in the plans would be prohibited in that zoning district. So a proposed chain link trash enclosure in their front yard along Tunis Street would also not comply. So that trash enclosure and the details should meet the provisions of the standards per the city code and also updated on the site plan and the details.
At the time conversation with Ellie, after he discovered that yesterday we discovered what all that, so.
We're working at the same time. Also, you've submitted a waiver to get relief from the standards located within section 375-469, which is vision clearance and public safety, including standards pertaining to properties located on corner lots. Because this is an existing parcel, this would not apply, and so that waiver is not needed. The original window and door arrangements shall be preserved to the maximum extent practicable. The elevation plans that are going to be submitted should include 2D building elevations identifying all windows and doors that are existing, that are being proposed, along with the sectional dimensions. And the site plan should also detail where the doors and windows that are being proposed are. Speaking to the parking requirement, because the site was, prior use of the site was a school, which would have required 35 parking spaces under the current USDO, the proposed use of the multi-unit dwelling with 32 units requires a minimum of 32 parking spaces. So the change of use does not result in an increase in the required number of off-street parking by more than 50% of that required for the prior use. Therefore, that parking provision would not apply to the project, and off-street parking is not required for them to provide for this project.
So you're in communication with the planning team, staff, taking steps forward. We look forward to really seeing this at the end, and wish you well. We'll do everything we can along with the staff to help you walk the path to approval. This is exciting for me because I've heard multiple times people going in to try to do this project, and you seem to have gotten a lot farther along than others. So we wish you well. We know that one is tough down. It's a very tough building.
It was the first 6 months, 7 months actually, it took us just to stabilize the building itself. But there are no beams, no joists, no unstable structure. So we ended up rebuilding all T-joist connections, but they have all new joists from floors, labeled, roof is new. So everything that's building what I was allowed to do, it's already new and structurally safe to 100%. So probably better than it was when it was built that part what we did. We are trying to keep the neighborhood also happy. We had not even a single complaint from the neighbors. Everybody's happy that we are doing something over there. So I would love to have you over there for a visit whenever you want to see it. You can pass by, stop my phone number, you can just tell me, I can make a tour of the building, you can see it. I'm happy to show it. And I'm really happy with the planning board, I'm happy with the building department, because you guys here help a lot actually. They help a lot, they're pushing me in the right direction if I have any questions, and even I have a lot of questions sometimes when I come here. So they can, even Chris from the circle, he comes also in, that helps me navigate. So I'm really happy with the Albany in general, the way how you guys support. I'm talking about myself. I don't think somebody else has any other problem. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you to the team that has been supporting you. If there's no further business, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. All right. Without objection, we are adjourned 7:08. Thank you very much.
8:07.
808, sir.
8:08.
Little dyslexia there. Mine says 8.
Looking at the universal time, it says 8:07.
Mine
Not
too.
7:08.
You want them,
Digitally?
I do, yes. If you want them, I can do them through